Good evening and welcome to the Azeroth review, where we just discuss whatever you wish to discuss, well, preferably related to Warcraft, although it keeps getting away from there as I keep getting away from it. And I guess as far as I can tell, I keep being out of it. It's Crucible. Oh my god. Be quiet. Why does it keep doing this? Yeah, sorry, I suppose it's Crucible of Storms time now, as well as yet another novelty Hearthstone toy, which is an idea I actually quite like. It's one of the, it's quite a small thing, but it's quite a shining light in BFA, I have to say. If I don't know whether this is a good thing or a bad thing, but if I was to have to list, you know, the top 5 things of BFA, actually, the themed Hearthstones we want, even though I'm not necessarily... Noble Garden is like one of my least favourite. I can never be arsed with it. So I probably won't get this one. Evening, Brian. But, I mean, it's the sort of thing that, you know, my main criticisms of the recent World of Warcraft has tended to be that they keep focusing too much on the big things. And they don't even make a good job of that. But, you know, all the tiny little things just seem to get swept under. There's like no little... There hasn't been anything like small bits of content. This is an example of one, High Storm's End as well. But, I mean, I suppose where people really be wanting to pay attention is in... I mean, it's not much of a raid, is it? Like, it's not quite the same. Whoever gets the world first on this one, it won't have quite the same level of prestige. Unless, of course, I suppose the one or both of the bosses is like first iteration hell yeah type awful. In which case, it's a bit of a crap race, isn't it, when there's only like a couple of bosses. But there we go. But I also, you know, I approve of the small raids as well. I mean, we used to have quite a few, didn't we? Or every now and then they were dotted around like a Nixia, just these one boss raids. So the idea of having a 2 or a 3 boss raid is also, it fills that niche to give people, just to spread content out a little bit. We've had 2 ones with decent number of bosses. But yeah, it's I've got, what have I got? Is it a full... Well, it's just under a week. If I decide to crack and go, no, I want the toy Noble Garden thing. So I wonder if you don't want to sign up with your tie, it's past 4 a.m. here. Why aren't you in bed? But yes, you carry on. I don't know why you're not asleep there. I mean, I had to go back to work today after having Easter off. I was very tired this morning. The problem is that I am essentially nocturnal, although over summer, like the first month of summer, I will often go full nocturnal. I didn't last time, I have to say, last summer, but that's because last summer was unreasonably hot and it didn't seem to cool down at night at all. So my sleep pattern was all over the place. Whereas normally over a summer, I actually adopt a good sleeping pattern because I go to bed at 4 a.m. and then I wake up at 11 a.m. It's perfect. That's the perfect amount of sleep. It's almost, give or take half an hour, the perfect amount of sleep. And it was consistent. That's my natural sleeping cycle, which unfortunately plays merry hell with having to go to work. So, but nonetheless, I do tend to go a little bit nocturnal when I have any time off at work at all. And I did not correct it in time this Easter. So I had to get up. I mean, I tried to get up yesterday. I ended up getting up about 10 o'clock, which is not too bad, I suppose. It's pretty bad, though. Yeah. So I was extremely tired this morning. So hopefully I'll get a good night's sleep tonight, but I better don't. Good vibes from the PTR. Yeah, there's people a lot more positive about 8.2. But I think 8.2 was always going to be the good one. Oh, well, I mean, not, you know, some people may think others have been good. But the better one, should we say. Because, you know, I mean, there is some more content that people are more positive about. But it was always, I mean, 8.2, no matter what people thought of BFA before it even came out, was going to be the one with new zones. New zones is always exciting, you know, and it's something they have been doing of late, haven't they? Bringing in new zones partway through an expansion. Didn't used to happen in the first few expansions. Or not actually. Not thinking about it. It might be outnumbering now. So TBC, you had a new zone. Isle of Keldanas. It was really a hub, but it was a zone, I suppose. Didn't really get anything Wrath, did we? Cataclysm didn't get anything. But then Mop, you know, you had the Isle of Thunder, which was very good. That was excellent. And then you had the Timeless Isle. Do I mind talking about spoilers? Data mine text? No, I don't at all. And we can just put the warning out there. And if there's an amount of it, I'll just put a warning on the thumbnail for people who may want to watch it not live as well. I may not say anything sensible though, because I have read some stuff, but not as much as I would have ordinarily. You know, I unfortunately continue to just keep drifting away. Even when there's some content to try out now, I have to say, it's now got to the point where if there's something I think to myself, oh yeah, if I were still playing WoW, I'd have been all over that. I'd have loved that. I don't even go back for that now. But, so yes, although I'm saying I'm going to wait for the next expansion, I think the reality is, I think I'm not. But go on, you go ahead. Because I don't think we can even look at... Because Raid Finder, it says Raid Finder's out. Does that... I was just trying to see what is actually out now. I'm trying to find the schedule for the raids. But I noticed World Quest rewards, it's then going up to item level 370. You know, my item level is not much above 370, actually. So, I was at one time in reasonable gear for a casual. I am now in gear that's going to be on par with people who've only just dinged. But hey, I've still got good enough item level to get into the LFRs. Emissary equipment will go up to 395. Azerite armor to 400. Emissary Azerite armor to 400. The end boss of the expansion, will it be Xalatath, N'Zoth or Sylvanas? I still think, until something definitively happens that proves me wrong, I am sticking with my original prediction of N'Zoth. Now, I'm not saying like as a traditional end boss type thing, but I think we're going to fight N'Zoth. And far from Sylvanas being a raid boss, I think she's going to have her redemption in it. You know, my prediction was that... Because before this whole thing started, the general narrative was that we had not killed Cthulhu or Yogg-Saron. We had simply stuffed them back down in a hole. Then, you know, it's pretty clear we have now. Without them having formally stated it, I'm not sure if they have or not, but it's pretty clear that Cthulhu at least is dead. And from that, you take it that N'Zoth is the only one left alive. So... I think we're going to kill N'Zoth off. I think we're going to end the old god's threat on Azeroth. I've said this before. And I think what's going to happen is Sylvanas is being played. You know, the old gods don't fear, or the old god now, I think, don't fear her. This nonsense about absolute rubbish. And actually that's now in data mine stuff. We know that's not the case. That she's absolutely been played by them. She will come to that realization. And... as a result, she will willingly step down as leader of the Horde, commit some act of sacrifice, which I don't believe will kill her, might use up one of her lives, and then she'll effectively go off and be like a hermit, like Thrall. She's going to go off and become Thrall, except Thrall's sort of coming back maybe. Maybe Thrall will be the next war chief, but I don't think so. Because again, those developers were talking about a new Horde emerging. So you can't really say Thrall, even though he's sort of coming back a bit. But yeah, I think she's going to disappear off, step back and not be leader of the Forsaken, not be leader of the Horde, willingly because she realises how easily she was played. I think that's what it's going to be. But we will see. As I say, until something happens that definitively says no, that's what I think. Is it St. George Day today or next week because of Easter? Ah, well, that's the thing, you see. All I know is that everywhere I've ever lived doesn't do anything to do with St. George's Day. There is nothing done on St. George's Day. However, I am aware that there are little pockets of England where they do Morris dancing and other such ridiculous activities. And all I can say is apparently there are some parts of England that have done that today, and there are some parts that are doing it next week. So I don't know. I mean, Jeremy Corbyn seemed to think it was today. Google seemed to think it was today. They know a thing or two. How long do I think Sylvanas has been a pawn of the old gods? Only since, because I think the original, I think the first pawn was effectively Vol'jin, and I think she's only been a pawn of the old gods since she ascended to be worshipped. I think they saw her potential to be a pawn and got the word to Vol'jin. You know, she'd be a good war chief, wouldn't she? Whisper in the old ear. Pretend to be lower spirits. She'd make a good war chief. It may not be. And why pancakes? Pancakes have got nothing to do with St. George's Day. Nothing to do with it at all. What's pancakes got to do with? Pancakes was like February. And the reason for pancakes is because it came... Hold on, let me get it right. It comes just before Lent, and the idea is that you're supposed to give up nice things for Lent. Like, you're supposed to put... I mean, we don't. You know, well, I say we, I'm not a Catholic. But Catholics tend to, you know, like Muslims, for example, give up eating and drinking for a month. During daylight hours anyway, which is a bit of an arsehole because at the moment it's during summer. Whereas no, Catholics, they'll give up they don't even give up sweets. They give up a specific type of sweet to show solidarity. And but the idea was that you were supposed to deprive yourself, so use up all the stuff you've got in the house so you're not tempted to eat it over Lent or whatever, I don't know. But pancakes have got nothing to do. We don't really do... I say St. George's Day... I mean, George wasn't even English anyway. He wasn't actually an English patron. Mind you, I don't think... Were any of the patron saints actually from the nation they're attached to? Maybe. Using up what? Yeah, using up stuff. So, some people do that sometimes, some don't. I don't think we really need to. I don't think pancakes holds the same sort of appeal anymore. I don't know why. St. Andrew is out, yeah. And St. Patrick was not Irish. St. Patrick was like French or something, I think. So I'm not sure. I'm not sure about the origins of David, but that might be the only one. But George was, was he Palestinian? No, he died in Palestine. But he was killed by the Romans, but he was Roman. But I don't know which part of the Roman Empire he's from. Not English anyway. Never even came to England as far as I know. I mean, he's like the patron saint of quite a few countries, isn't he? Patron saint of Portugal as well, I think, St. George. So, yeah, all a nonsense. But, you know, if Jeremy Corbyn wants to give everyone an extra 4 bank holidays, who am I to argue? It would have meant I'd have had 2 days off this week, which would have completely knackered 2 of my classes. Like, there's 2 classes where I have them for quite a long time, on a Monday and a Tuesday. So I've already lost a load of time with them yesterday, because, you know, that sort of happens. And there's another bank holiday in 2 weeks' time. You know, it's going to be May Day in 2 weeks' time. So we're going to lose them then as well. In fact, I was getting all my students today, if they haven't registered to vote, to register to vote. Am I giving 8.2 a go? Do you know, I don't know. I'm not really feeling... I'm not at the moment. Like, the thing is, I've just had 2 weeks off for Easter. And I thought to myself, like a month ago, I thought to myself, I'll probably, you know, catch up a bit with the solo stuff over Easter. And I didn't. And if I'm going to be honest, it's not like I was rushed off my feet this Easter. You know, I potted about quite a lot. I wasn't like fully focused on loads of other stuff. So if I'm going to be completely honest, I think to myself, like I keep thinking to myself, yeah, I might just do some stuff. I might just do some stuff, but I don't think I will, because I mean I can't believe I won't at all. But at the same time, I've just had 2 weeks off and I haven't been on once. So, and over the next 2 weeks, I actually have got quite a lot to do. Because I've got stuff to paint. I've got a Warhammer tournament in just under 2 weeks. So the bank holiday weekend, I'm often, playing a tournament. So I've still got stuff to paint for that. I actually got my arse into gear, which is streamed a bit more during the holiday. Well, I streamed more than I usually do. I may try and do some more of that. But I mean, I still do have things to do. I had, there was still quite a lot of, although it was time off, there was still a load of coursework to mark, so I wasn't completely at leisure. Summer is always a better time for like being full-time layabout, because I don't actually have that much. If you're going to be teaching something new like I was this year, then over the summer, you've got quite a lot to do. But next year, I have not been told that I'm teaching anything new. So I don't actually have that much preparation to do over summer. You just tidy things up a bit. You go through it, think, right, what could have I improved? Tidy it up. And then you've actually genuinely got 6 weeks off. 6 weeks doing whatever I wish. Just looking back to what Varamathrus was data mined to say during Anturus, it matters not, you are blind to the darkness in your midst. There's all sorts of things like that been in the game, though. I mean, that goes right back to Mists of Pandaria. Remember, it may have been round about Mists of Pandaria where they started to think of the story arc that we're getting to maybe towards the end of now. Remember Raden, when we defeat Raden, he says he doesn't think we're up to the darkness to come, but we've earned the right to try. Now, that darkness to come could have been anything that's happened since. It could have been the Legion attack that we've dealt with already. But it might not be. It might be what's happening right now. And bearing in mind that Raden, as essentially a Titan construct, as a keeper, he might have been much more in tune with the problem that's going on regarding Azeroth rather than the Legion specifically. So it may have been even going back that far may have been referring to now. And then, of course, there's all these stuff when you're gathering those things for Rathian during MOP as well. There was quite a lot of stuff, and when he ate the heart, there was quite a lot of stuff in there that I think is much more likely to relate to what's happening now than say, Legion. But the problem with statements like that is it can make, you can almost attribute it to anything, any expansion, because every expansion has its existential threats, doesn't it? WoD probably less so. I mean, WoD was probably it's not just that it wasn't a popular expansion, it probably had the tamest threat. Orcs were threatening to invade. Okay. Are they bringing anything really nasty? No, they're bringing your own technology. Someone has gone back to them and introduced your crappy goblin technology to them. That's it. Orcs and goblins. I think we could have coached, They didn't even make it through the portal properly. Didn't even make it through the portal. What a crap threat that was. Also fast to catch up now in BFA. I'm not missing much. Well, I know. Well, the thing is, I'd played quite a lot of on the PTR as well. I haven't actually been onto the PTR. I have updated it again, intending to do it, but I haven't yet. But yeah, I haven't done any 8.2 on the PTR yet. 2 weeks holiday and didn't manage to fix the chat box. It's not the chat box doesn't work. There's nothing on my end that's wrong with it. And there's 2 types of chat box and neither of them work. Better than Gnome Tech, it's inevitable. Yes, of course it's better than Gnome Tech. At least Goblin Tech, you've got a chance of being able to use it more than once. Although as they mostly focus on building bombs, they're not really intended to be used more than once. But I mean, that's another annoying Oh, do you know what? That's another thing that's pissed me off about 8.2 as well. No sooner, right, so you've got the mechagnomes. They're a thing. And just as with the other major races that Blizzard have introduced as NPCs, people can't get it into their heads that Blizzard are using a different type. They're using a different system now to be able to use them for animations in clips and things like that. So yet again, just as we had it for the Fox people, I haven't watched the video, but I've seen someone going, oh, mechagnomes, they've done this thing. Does that mean they're going to be the next allied race? Piss off. There's no suggestion they're going to be an allied race. I'll stop that right now. Does my head in. The very idea. If they're going to inflict gnomes, any more gnome races, then it can be, as people have suggested, leper gnomes and give it to the Horde. See how they like it. See how many people play Horde then when they've got gnomes amongst their midst. Because they'll have gnomes and Tauren then. That'll get people going back to the Alliance. You know, from the Alliance point of view, they've got gnomes. That's a bit of a downside. But if the Horde have gnomes and Tauren, all of a sudden the Alliance look a lot better. I might actually send that suggestion in. If they're serious about... since I do models, what do I think of the Jaina statue? I thought it was fine. I discussed this a few weeks ago, didn't I? I thought it was all right. I don't know what people had a problem with. It was all fine. I mean, I'm not into statues and things like that. I don't tend to get those sort of things anyway. Because oh my God. Everyone has done a video on Fox people being the next allied race. I was the only one who explained how, no, ain't happening. But, you know, I don't know what these people are doing. But then now some people at least are cottoning on to, oh, mechagnomes. Because all it was is NPC. They used to do... NPCs were much more basic models than player characters. Because player characters had to go through many more motions for animation. But Blizzard have now started to do it with major NPC races. Specifically, and they said it themselves, Blizzard clearly stated the reason why was so that they could do little cutscenes and things like that and have it much more expressive and make it easier for them to do those little cutscenes. That's all it was for. It's for cutscenes. That's it. And they said that. So, yeah, but people, you know, it'll have to go on for years before people will just accept it. I mean, at least, see, the thing with Vulpera as allied race is that made no sense on any level. Because the whole point of an allied race is it's a race that already exists. Like, we would have called it a sub-race. When it was first leaked, we all called them sub-races. Because, oh, brilliant, more customization. So you've got different choices of the particular type of dwarf you are or elf you are or something like that. We thought this was a great big thumbs up. And then Blizzard went, no. We've got an even better idea. It's a completely separate race. And we're going to charge you money for it. How about that? Yeah, thanks. Much better. So, yeah. But, yeah, so Vulpera made no sense because there are no Vulpera or anything like them. Whereas mechagnomes, well, there are gnomes. So, you know, it's not that you couldn't introduce a mechagnome as an allied race. You could. But if they were going to, they would surely have done it. They would surely have already announced it, should we put it that way, because they'd have to be coming out by 8.3 at the latest. You don't bring them out in the next expansion when they're not relevant anymore. But at least they could be an allied race of some kind. Ethereals would be a decent ranged class. Ethereals are really more of a race than a class. I also don't see them doing much in the way of combat. But, I mean, I suppose when we did fight one, it was very arcane-y, wasn't he? Firing lots of lightning balls and stuff. No, in terms of rage, if they want to do another class, they want to do a range class, they might as well jump on the bandwagon that everyone else is jumping on and do a necromancer class. You know, I say everyone. I mean, we had a necromancer for Diablo 3. We're now getting one for ESO soon. Although I'm looking at it and I'm thinking, I'm not really keen on this. So I've got to be honest, I'm not keen on the Necromancer here. I think it's, you know, it works RP-wise. I just don't think I would like to play it. And they might as well get onto that and do it themselves. I mean, Necromancer would be a perfectly sensible one to do. It would just annoy an awful lot of Warlocks. Will I give Cyberpunk 2077 a play when it comes out? No, I don't even know what that is. If it's a game. Well, I assume it's a game. What is it? Is it a fantasy role-playing game? Because if it's not a fantasy role-playing game, it's certainly not. If it is, then I have potentially thought about maybe, as I'm not totally committed to any one game at the moment, then that free, if I'm going to be casual anyway, it does potentially free me up to be casual with new games. I really ought to sign up to something that lets me know when new PC games are coming out, in case there is anything of interest. A Blade Runner style. Oh, that sounds more sci-fi, doesn't it? Let us have a quick look then. I'll have a quick look, but it does not sound like it'd be up my street. No, God, that would definitely not be up my street. No. Let's have a look. See if there's any coming out for PC 2019. What the hell is this? The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt. Isn't that already out? That's not 2019, surely. Is this... And this might actually just be a rundown of games that are available now. It is, in fact. What a load of crap. Right, so I need to find a site that actually tells me what's coming up. What about the Warhammer 2 PC game? Are you talking about Chaos Bane, or are you talking about a 40k game? Chaos Bane, let me try and... Because I have been tentatively following that a little bit, but I haven't... Is it out yet, actually? Hold on. It's not out yet, is it? I'm hoping you won't have to get it on... I don't actually have a Steam account. But that's assuming that's the one you mean. And that is at least fantasy, and it's Warhammer related. Even though all Warhammer games I've ever played, I've played some that have been quite good. Like Dark Omen was quite good, and Warhammer Online was quite good in its way. But they also had massive elements of disappointment to them. Oh, Total War Warhammer. All right. No, I haven't played Total War Warhammer. I suppose, yeah, maybe. Yes, I suppose maybe. Making Necromancer in WoW would possibly mean changing the Warlock so much to be unrecognisable. Well, this is the thing I always say. It's like, you know, Warlocks have already been surgically removed bits of them twice, haven't they? Like Death Knights came along. And it's like the Blizzard went to Warlocks. Oh, you know that Deathcore? You're not keen on Deathcore, are you? It's nice, it's a bit rubbish, isn't it? We'll just be taking that off you. And you know, a couple of other bits and pieces. And then Warlocks chunted about that, and then they got over it. A few years passed, and then all of a sudden Blizzard went, "Oh, Demon Hunters. Yeah, we'd like to do Demon Hunters." Warlocks go, "No, you're not having it. Yeah, we need your Metamorphosis if you don't mind." Which has just been buffed, I've noticed, for 8.2. Well, it's been buffed anyway. 8.1.5, sorry, I should think. And so, yeah, I can only imagine what Warlocks are going to do if Blizzard say they're going to do Necromancers. They'll go ballistic. That being said, at least it's not like they've been weakened as a result of it. They always remain a strong class to play from a numbers point of view. But yeah, you can well understand how having iconic abilities nicked off you is a bit of a ball ache. So, yes, I have little doubt. In fact, I reckon they could nick stuff off both the Death Knight and the Warlock, you know. But at the same time, if they want to do another class has to be a ranged class for once. And I don't mean a ranged class that also has a close combat spec. No. Ranged only. No more melee combat. None. No more classes in melee. Too many already. Expecting much from the Tolkien film? No, those sort of films don't do it for me. I mean, it's like Shadowlands. It was alright, but it's not my sort of thing, really. They always change things in it anyway. It's not even like documentary. You can't even watch it as a documentary. Not knowledgeable anyways, but isn't a warlock fell-based and necromancer's more undead? Not strictly speaking, no. I mean, yeah, you're right in terms of the necromancer being more death magic, but some of the stuff that warlocks had was all, I mean, would also be regarded as that. Because, in fact, where is it? Have I got... No, I've got it somewhere. Do we need to get it up again? Where is it? I think I have it. But I may not. Bugger. Right, let's try and find it again. Because I've now got room on the left, I've just realised. Now that I've got no chat box. I've actually got room. Now what did I... call it? I think. Oh no! Shit! I've got to try and think what I called it now. Ah, here it is. Right, down there. Cover you two up. So, death. Oh, where's my pointer? Oh no. Above Sylvanas, but below my Ashbringer. Oh, for goodness sake. Where's my Ashbringer? Ashbringer needs to go to the very top. Then it will be useful as a pointer. So, necromantic here, death. That's your death thing. Very, very... Assuming this geography has anything to do with anything, is very close to shadow. So, they're going to have a lot of shadow magic. And, of course... Fell stuff has a lot of shadow magic as well, so it will be nicking stuff off them. And when it comes to the undead side of it as well, that's where they may nick from Death Knights as well. You know, obviously raising pets is going to be a thing. Give me a new ranged attack that damages with the power of love. What we want Care Bears to it as a new class in the game. Care Bears. I suppose that would tie in with the fact that they're removing, you know, so you can hide chest for your transmog. Blizzard can't be asked to let us actually wear the transmog we want, but hey, we can look naked if we want, virtually. Do I think Blizzard have classes in a good enough place where they can leave classes alone and not have to revamp them for Revenge of the Potato People? I mean, I don't, but at the same time, I don't like the idea of them revamping classes ever. Except when the game changes so fundamentally it has to be done. I would prefer a constant process of evaluating and tweaking classes, not constantly reimagining them. Because that is where we've got into the mess we are now. That being said, there's not a huge amount wrong with most of them at the moment. There are still things wrong with them, though. But a lot of that has come from the philosophy rather than the actual design, I think. But yeah, I wouldn't look forward to another revamp of classes next expansion. Because I object to revamping anything, you know, changing anything for an expansion, bringing something new in, developing it over the course of an expansion, and then getting rid of it and doing something else that's new. Because that means you never perfect it. Ever. Aren't soul shards death magic? I suppose they are, yeah. Yes, I guess that's true. Oh yeah, they'll be stealing that. That'll be gone. But then technically they don't do that anyway anymore, do they? Do they? I don't think warlocks even do that for soul shards nowadays, do they? Care Bears shooting rainbows, yeah, we don't want that. We could do without that. We've already got gnomes, is that not bad enough? The new raid is so melee unfriendly. Some members in your guild are 4 to 9 level, but me can't even get into a normal pug, is it? That is... See, that's when you talk about, you know, classes, that's where it is really disappointing, because although the encounter designers have a responsibility as well, if you don't want to particularly constrain the encounter designers, class designers have to come up with some way. Because I mean, I don't know these fights at all. So, but if you told me what it is that was so melee unfriendly, I bet it's the same sort of stuff that has existed for years, that keeps happening. And it's the sort of thing that class designers could absolutely obviate. So that would be extremely disappointing if they've yet again stuffed melee when the bulk of classes, I mean, that's what gets me. The bulk of classes are melee. 9 classes have a melee spec. 6 of them have to be. 50% of all classes have to be melee. Only 3 classes have to be ranged if they're going to be DPS. What do I think of the new mech? There is no allied race. There is no gnome, mechagnome allied race. Let's get that clear. Granted, I'm not these days reading everything that comes out, but that, I bet you, is not a thing. What are its racials then, if it's been data mined? That's the easy way to tell. What racials has it got? Because if it hasn't got any, then it's not a race. It's an NPC. Put that there. I'll keep that. I need to keep that there. So I've got it for future use. That also reminds me, I've just remembered something. Because there is actually going to be something technically new I will be playing soon, because ESO Elsewhere comes out soon. June the 4th. Okay. Oh no! June the 4th, that rings a bell. Is that the day that idiot Trump's supposed to be coming over again? I think it is. I think that's when we're having a little visit. Oh no, yeah, June 3rd to the 5th. For PC it comes out this time next month. Well, does it? It says here June the 4th on PC. Where are we getting this from? It says Bethesda has confirmed, I don't know why they'd be confirming it, that Elsewhere will launch across PS4, Xbox One and PC on June 4th, 2019. Is there an early access for pre-order or something? Is that what it is? Hold on, when was it? Let's try and find news from the past week. No, it's still saying June 4th. So unless there's a... Getting the pre-order gives you early access. If it does, then I suppose that works out well, because if it was this time next month, that would be roundabout in time for a week off, wouldn't it? When do I get a week off again? So, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Oh no, be the week after I would get off. So June 4th is console for PC. Everything comes out 10-14 days early. Always. Well, it's not what they're saying. I'm looking at the site and it says for PC June the 4th. So they're being very sneaky otherwise. Anyway, first boss in the raid, or more, two bosses, yes. One needs to be range tanked. Oh, so there isn't even a role for the tank. Lovely. Or from lead tanks, then he does AoE damage. So is this what's the mechanic that allows a range to tank it then? Is it like a warlock type tanky with some mechanic like with Illidan? Does he take extra shadow damage or something that allows you to hold threat? Boring games. You just watched the Warcraft movie for the first time. It was only $6. You still feel like you wasted money. That is appalling. I think it's a great film. It's an excellent film. Don't know why people are so mean about it. In fact, just for that, I might watch it again this week while I'm painting some models. But anyway, what was wrong with it? I thought it was very good. I mean, it would have been even better because, you know, when you look at the stuff they edited out and they didn't quite finish, if they'd have done that, that would have made the film even better. Should Paladin have a range spec? I feel like at this point in the game, given that they are point blank refusing to stop fights being melee unfriendly, and whether they do that with the encounter team or whether they do that the class design team, and they said they were going to get the class design team and the encounter design team to coordinate with each other. Well, have they, Al? So given that they refuse to do it that way, then yes, I think all classes should have a ranged DPS spec. Simple as that. Every single one. In fact, why not give every class a ranged and a melee spec? Why not? And you could easily do it. You don't even have to design a new spec for them. That's the thing. You know, we were talking about this months ago, weren't we? You know, for Paladins, you could literally give them the Shadow Priest spec and just change the names of the spells and make it like yellow instead of purple. It would do the same thing. It'd all work. Shadow Priest might not be very happy, but we could give them a melee spec as well. They can have ret spec and call it something else. Whack things over the head with their stick. All things could have a range spec. Like something like rogues could get, like, you know, the Demon Hunter in Diablo 3, crossbows, Witch Hunter type thing. They could have that going for them. You know, warriors can have throwing axes, just swing throwing axes at stuff. There's loads of stuff you can do. Loads. They don't need to give them the bow. I don't think a warrior with a bow would be all that great. Warriors are supposed to all be about rage, aren't they? You can't, like, angrily fire a bow. You can angrily throw an axe, though. No, I'd have throwing weapons for them. Give them throwing weapons. Do trolls still get a bonus on throwing weapons as well? I can't remember. They used to, didn't they? And they used to have a bonus for throwing weapons. In fact, a lot of good that was. But it used to be a bit of a staple of role-playing games, the old throwing weapon that would come back to you. Like in Baldur's Gate 2, you can get a dwarven throw, a big hammer that you can give to a dwarf. Chuck it, comes back to you. The boss launches a bolt attack that deals 75k in a 5 yard of a target, but deals less damage the further away from him. Also, the attack gives you 150% threat to whoever got hit. Oh. I mean, yeah, well, something like that, yes, I will agree. That's almost like being deliberately melee unfriendly. If you not only... I mean, any sort of AoE around a boss is naturally melee unfriendly. And I don't see the point in it. Either make it raid wide or not at all. And there are sometimes hazards with being by the boss, of course. But that shouldn't be one of them. And if you're also going to allow for range to tank it, then yeah, it's like you're telling everyone that doesn't have a ranged ability to piss off on the bench, isn't it? That sounds pretty poor. And yeah, I mean, that's the last thing that's really wrong. Raids, you know, the raids are done generally very well. The last thing to put right on them, and they've never even shown any serious attempt to put it right, is, you know, going away from... They attempted to, I suppose... Well, they at least came up with the phrase, bring the player, not the class. And they tried, you know, and they didn't do too badly with that. but they've completely abandoned it now. Completely abandoned it. Trump's not going to offer us anything he's not allowed. We can possibly offer him a dementia test, maybe. Maybe we get him to visit the Royal College of Physicians or something. Do warriors still equip bows, guns, and throwing weapons? They can do, I think. I don't think the ability of them was removed. It's just that there is a 0 point now. Like, there is no use for it. They used to only use it to pull things. But now, you don't pull things, you just charge them. That's how... See, a warrior, a tank used to have to pull something to you away from all the stuff that would add into the combat otherwise. In fact, I remember, because I could do this as a paladin with exorcism, you know, pulling one at a time the constructs in the ossuary below Scholomance. That was a very... and that, you know, because I had Sense Undead, so I could see on the minimap when the perfect time to pull them was, so I didn't get another one. That sort of thing has gone from the game. The way a warrior pulls now is not by attracting something's attention and pulling it round a corner. It's by charging into the nest. So there's no point anymore. Your warrior likes to dual wield sticks. Dual wield polearms. You went to try LFR today to see how much determination you can get. Oh. Limit to try and first boss with 5 locks and 5 shadow priests at the moment. Yeah, I'd heard they were doing some funny things. I mean, when that's a thing, and okay, trying isn't the same as that's the way they're going to do it. But when that's even a thing to think about in a 20-man raid, that you actually fill up half your raid spots with 2 classes, that's appalling. That should be embarrassing for Blizzard. That should be a source of embarrassment, even for min-maxers. And you know what's going to happen, of course, don't you? If they actually kill it like that and Method do the same, or whoever else does it in the next few days, that'll filter down to everyone then. Everyone will be saying, oh, you need like 5 locks and 5 shadow priests to do it. Insane. But I don't have to worry about such things now. Don't have to get on my Ret Paladin high horse. I wonder what I'd have thought of raiding in general. Because I was generally, as I say, quite positive about it. But I wonder what I'd have thought about it if I'd have, you know, because the reason I play a Paladin, and I've always played a Paladin in it, is because I got into playing Paladins in Dungeons and Dragons, and I've always just sort of stuck with them. But the first character I ever played in Dungeons and Dragons, which was my first proper role-playing game, where you play a single character. I'd played computer games where you have like a team, but not a single character. Was a mage. You know, played a mage. So if that had have continued, and I'd have therefore, when World of Warcraft came out, played a mage, I wonder how my perception of raiding would have been affected by that, because very different experience playing a mage as opposed to playing a Ret Paladin. Has it been 31 days since people got banned for the XP exploit yet? I'm not sure. I don't know when that happened. It was a few. I don't think it was as many as 31 days. Am I coming back to raid after the school year is over? No. I'm like... Well, I'm not going to be busy this summer, but you can't just come back for... I'm not going to get my character geared and ready for raiding just to raid for 6 weeks. That would be madness. So, but no, I mean, not only is work not going to let up, like, you know, I knew this year was going to be extra busy, but it's not like now that it's over, or it's not quite over, but now it's nearly over. Next year we'll be back to... It won't. Next year will also be hectic. It may be less hectic, but it will still be hectic. But the thing is as well, I mean, I've not just been sat here throwing my head into my work and doing nothing else. I've been building up other interests, other hobbies. I'm not going to give those up for it. And and as I say, the longer I don't play World of Warcraft, it is a bit like an addiction in some ways. I wouldn't say I was addicted to it, but it's a little bit like that. The longer I'm away from it, the less inclined I am to go back to it. You know, I'm just not. I'm just thinking, yeah. I increasingly just think I'm done with it. I don't think, even if they massively improved the game for the next expansion, and they may do, but I doubt it. I don't think I'll play it. You have lots of stuff to do this summer. It's hot. If it is hot, I will get almost nothing done again. Last summer, I got almost nothing done. People kept telling me about various ways to keep cool as well. All nonsense. People don't understand how Windows work in the UK. So, no. I will be completely screwed again if it's like that. I really don't know what I can do. Apart from getting one of those little evaporator things, maybe on a, you know, just a small one, maybe that would help. I mean, what I was doing was getting a desk fan and blowing it over a big bowl of ice. I was constantly making ice in the freezer, and that works for a while. The problem with it is noise of fan when, you know, streaming, bit of a problem. And I would certainly intend to stream more over summer. Is the rumour that through Anduin, Saurfang is going to meet a Naru and become a paladin true? No! He's not a paladin, he's a warrior. Nothing. No, good God. Opening up orc paladins. No. I mean, we've got a night elf paladin NPC. That hasn't opened up night elf paladins, has it? Close the windows and turn up the AC. There is no AC. Just people outside, people in America don't understand. We don't have air conditioning. Air conditioning is opening a window. That's what air conditioning is. Heating is closing it again and putting a jumper on or a sweater. Humidifiers don't help, sadly. Humidifiers certainly won't, no. But, you know, basically I was, the first few weeks of last summer, I was completely helpless. I could do nothing. And I mean nothing. Warrior priest from D&D? For what? I mean, paladins are warrior priests, and that's what we call warrior priests in this game. Because the early paladins were either warriors that were shown priestly ways, or they were priests that were shown war ways. Don't tell me orcs can't be a paladin. I haven't said orcs can't be a paladin. What I've said is that Saurfang's not going to become a paladin. What are you guys in the Dark Age over there with no AC? Yes, we are. And we're not likely to introduce it on any large scale because we're trying to be more eco-friendly in this country. Some people think we're not being enough, and that's probably true. So we're hardly likely, in a culture where we're already expecting our politicians to do more in terms of reducing our environmental impact, we are hardly likely to suddenly shift our culture to being energy guzzling air conditioners. People in this country are stupid anyway. They all like it when it's hot. I've never understood that. I have never got that. Why the hell people want it to be hot? I mean, it was warm this weekend. All of a sudden, everyone went out and had barbecues. You know. It stops raining for 5 minutes and people have a barbecue. Should all just give up cars and get AC? We should possibly have neither. But I need my car. What do I do when it gets hot? If I can't cool myself down, nothing. I'm not kidding. I cannot function when it's hot. And I've always been like that. I was like that when I was a young, fit teenager as well. When it's hot, I cannot function at all. Well, Australia, of course, I mean, this is the thing, right? Because this happened last summer and it'll happen again this summer. So the temperature will tip 30 degrees and we'll be melting in the heat. And Australians in Australia will laugh about it. Oh, you should see the temperature here. 30, like, 90 degrees in the shade, and we're talking Celsius. I know it's not actually that. But, some ridiculous temperature, and they'll laugh at us. But actually, Australians that live in the UK have to then tell them, but it's different. Because when you're in a hot country, your buildings are specifically designed to expel heat. So, whereas in the UK, our buildings are specifically designed to retain heat. In winter, I hardly need the heating on in this house. I almost never, it has to be pretty bloody cold for me to turn the heating on. It's not needed because it retains so much heat. But in the summer, that's a bit of a pain in the ass. And the blinds are no good, but it's not my house. I have no control over that. I would get the thickest curtains known to man if it was just up to me. I did actually try getting some thick black plastic and not taping it, but affixing it around the window in here. Unfortunately, that did not work to my satisfaction. You'd rather be in the cold. Exactly. No, this is it, Alberto. This is what I always say. This is why I've said all through winter I have diligently not complained about the cold. So now I have every right to complain about the heat. Because I can always put more layers on if I'm cold. That's exactly it. There is a limit to how many layers I can remove when it's too hot. And quite frankly, even when I'm not streaming or out in public, and therefore technically there is no limit to how many layers I can shed, even that doesn't work at a certain point. You remember sitting in your car last summer for hours, 2 from your house just for the air conditioning. That is madness. What a waste of energy. Anyway, go on then. Stop being eco-friendly, kickstart global warming faster, rebuild the buildings and include AC. Yeah, the problem with climate change is not just the warming effect. But anyway, even if I wanted an air conditioner, I can't get one because you need to store. You can get portable ACs. I have seen them, but even that requires you to open the window because it needs an outlet. Otherwise, the heat just comes back. So you need to chuck it out there somehow. So you need a sealed hole somewhere, even if that means opening the window and affixing. But, it's not my window. I can't go affixing things to it. Because it's not a temporary affixation either. You're permanently gluing something to it. You get more of a dry desert heat. I mean, yeah, there's that too. We don't. We're an island. We're never far from quite a large amount of water. Who is better, ESO orcs or WoW orcs? ESO orcs. Really? ESO paladins or WoW paladins? No, I'm not sure about that. Because I might be biased because I played a WoW paladin for a very long time and have a lot of good memories about them. Whereas in ESO I've only played it casually. I would naturally be inclined to say the WoW paladin because it fits much more the Holy Warrior style. Whereas in ESO, this is where I got very confused with my Templar because I went very magic-y for the healing and stuff like that. But I ended up using a two-hander or dual wielding or stuff like that, and it's like, well, that's not. So your two-hander, your physical weapons want a stamina build. Your other stuff wants a magicka build. Bit confused. You can't just half and half it because that's just stupid. So you end up in a bit of a mess, and you have to sort of choose one or the other. So I've effectively chosen a magic one, which means I use a stick and not a big sword or mace. So I'd have to say the WoW Paladin because it does combine the essential features. Also, I can't help but notice, and I accept that they don't call it a Paladin, they call it a Templar. But I notice it doesn't get a bubble. So it's not really a proper Paladin. Who makes my cute art? It's actually the wife of one of the Paladin Templars called Firecatch. So fire. Let's have a look. I've got a Firecat. I can't remember the Twitter address. I'd have to find it. It'll be in my following thing, won't it? So it's at FireCatRich, who does them. I'm mostly, at the moment, I don't think I'll be doing any more WoW ones for a while. So at the moment it's full on, it's mostly been Warhammer ones anyway. And I need more Warhammer ones constantly. So I've put in a request for another 4. I do like 4 at a time, because then it's not months and months I'm waiting. It's usually just like a few weeks. And yes. But it's all very chaosy. I've asked for next. I've asked for a Beast of Chaos one, a Khorne one, a Slanesh one. What else did I ask for? Something else. Can't remember. Oh, you've got loads of crowns for ESO. What to do? Well, nothing at the moment. I actually spent a few of mine because I was trying to make a character to be a vampire, and I created 2 and made them both vampires at quite low level. I don't know whether that's sensible or not. I suppose the sooner you get started on the vampire line, the better. But when the new expansion comes out, I'll be on my main with that, playing that. So we'll just have to see. The problem is I'm too fickle. Like in World of Warcraft and ESO, for me, in terms of classes, are completely the opposite. Because in World of Warcraft, I only really wanted to play a paladin. That was it. You know, I would play other classes just for interest, but you know those people who play a class for one, and I know, okay, some people are just trying to play flavour of the month, and it turns out they're just shit players, so they end up keep changing it. But there are some players who just genuinely, they're not bad players, they're good players, or they may be good players. And they play a class for a bit, for like half a year, and then they just want to try something else because they're that fickle. I'm like that with ESO. You know, I keep coming back to the Templar class, I have to say. But in World of Warcraft, I never, ever wanted to main any. The idea of main... I mean, for goodness sake, I played a Ret Paladin for God knows how many years. If I was even willing to main any other, literally any other class, I would have done so years ago. Because, you know, whenever I left guilds, it was always for various reasons. But there were times when underuse was one of them. And as a paladin, you know, that's sometimes why. But in ESO, no, I get on with all the classes to a certain extent. It's just I'm so fickle that I end up never getting them to level cap. Just keep abandoning them and doing another one instead. They made the against overwhelming odds PvP weekly reward. You must kill 100 level 120. No longer you farm 110 to 119 questing 2. Oh well. I suppose that's good. Pity the poor leveler. Of course, if they didn't have whatchamacallit on, war mode on, then they wouldn't get ganked, would they? You're super torn on your Warden Ice Mage and your Templar Priest on who to main. The Templar Priest. That's what mine is, effectively. Even though I don't actually do any healing, but I kit him out for healing. He just has a Destruction Staff as one of his weapons with a load of offense. You only need Adric's Spear anyway. Whatchamacallit? Yeah, Adric's Spear. That's all you really need. And it heals you as well. Does damage to multiple things. Just get him in front of you. Spam the hell out of that. And it heals you. Although I did die yesterday, but that was on a dangerous world boss, basically, thing that I happened across when a group were trying to kill it. So I turned healer then. I was healing everyone then. But unfortunately, it took exception to something I did and smacked me in the face. And I died. But the problem with it is I keep thinking I'd like to just... I'd prefer to heal in dungeons on ESO, I think. But at the same time... And I was happy doing that when the game first came out. But now I think to myself, but I'll do it wrong. I won't really know what I'm doing. So I need to practice. But unfortunately, healing is not one of those things you can practice on your own. You have to practice in a group. And if you practice it in a group where the content's so easy that no one really realistically needs healing, then you're not really learning anything there. Because I've done that in WoW sometimes, gone into LFR just to try out some healing. And it's just pointless because you don't know whether you're doing any good or not. You've no idea if you're doing any good because people are essentially not really dying. Or the people who are dying deserve to die. And even in the days when I was a good healer, I would have still let those same people die because, you know, they were asking for it. I don't just mean gnomes. You're doing a random daily each day. Lately you've been running to groups where the tank is just a DPS. Well, this is the sort of thing that happens in WoW a lot, isn't it? I suppose it's inevitable. That's the problem. Because you don't even have for tanks. It's not even... The way you get threat isn't even the same, quite the same. Because you don't have our AoE taunts or anything like that, do you? You don't have taunts full stop. You only play Stampler, but you're getting really bored spamming biting jabs. The animation just annoys you. But what else? It's the best ability in the game, though. What else are you going to do? What else are you going to do? Apart from obviously weave in some normal attacks just to build up your stamina again. I mean, I use it as a Magicka Templar. It's the same thing. Except when the Magicka version heals you as well. So you don't even need to heal yourself. If you figure out how to get decent ENO, let me know. Well, I know you have to do animation cancelling, and I'm not very happy about that. You've not done anything but normal stuff for years now. You want to get back to the vet level stuff. See, I haven't even done the normal level stuff yet. But when Elsewhere comes out, I will play that, and for a bit anyway. Or the gnomes let them die. I do let the gnomes die. Do you know what? My greatest moment as a healer was in TBC. And for Kel'Thas, the kill, the actual only recorded one I've got of it, was, you know, I was largely bored because they basically just they did what all people should have done with, all raid leaders should have done with me, is they put me on general healing. Perfect. Because I actually paid attention to what was going on and triaged properly. And that's when we got the first kill. And I've got the video for that, but I do next to nothing because it's all fine. But the second time we killed it, they put me on tank healing. Very bad idea. What you ideally want put on a tank healer is someone with good gear but no brains. Because all you have to do is spam them. It's easy. Anyone can do that. And what happened... We were wiping all sorts of shit was going on. And then on the actual second kill, the healers were dying out all the way through phases 4 and 5. Well, certainly through 4. They were just dying. I don't know what they were dying to. I literally do not know what can kill a healer on that fight. But they did. And it ended up, they were just... So obviously each time a healer died, you had to pick up the slack. And it ended up with the boss still on 21%. And we'd been wiping all night on it. 21%, hi Kevin. And I was the only healer left alive. And I thought, sod this, there's no way we're wiping again. And so I had to do ultra triage. I had to obviously make sure the tank was always topped. Remember the legendary healing weapon as well that you needed to have on them at all times. But I also had to heal the rest of the raid. So... I had to look around very carefully and decide who to prioritise. Gnomes, not a chance. They were straight away on the scrap heap. And they knew it as well. I also, and this wasn't something I liked doing, but I had to do it. People who were using health pots and bandages when they could, I had to focus more healing on the ones who weren't doing that, even though they didn't deserve it. Because at the end of the day, we needed the DPS. So I was actually ending up prioritising the reckless people. You know, the damage sponges who who just didn't look after their own health. But yeah, it was absolutely fantastic, that. From 21%, no other healers. And it's not like they all died at 21%. They'd been slowly dying for quite a while before then. But it was a very efficient healer, a paladin, during TBC. You know, even on a first kill when you were going flat out a lot of the time, I generally would finish the fight on very close to full health. But then, of course, you could also take pots every 2 minutes as well. It wasn't like the cooldown doesn't start if you're in combat. So what I would do, I wouldn't wait for my mana to get low like some people's did. Whenever I had daylight in my mana bar that would be filled up by a mana pot, without wasting the mana pot, I used to take a mana pot, like every time, because you know that was the way to also stretch your mana out. But that was the fun side of healing. When everything went to shit, that was the fun part of it. The problem with healing in general in WoW is most of the time it doesn't, especially when you're farming it. Farming becomes desperately dull. Now it might be better these days because healers, when they're bored, can do some DPS. Back then, not really. I mean, you could do a bit of joke DPS just, you know, to relieve the boredom. But you weren't doing serious DPS as a healer. So it was desperately, desperately dull once people had learnt the fight. So you lived your life in constant frustration because whilst people were learning the fight, you were shouting at them to stop standing in fire. When will they learn? And then when they finally do learn, you're still not happy because now there's nothing to heal because they're all just not taking damage. So halfway through halfway through. I think Kel'Thas was the last boss I ever killed as a holy paladin, or at least the last one I progressed on as a holy paladin. After that, I think from Black Temple onwards, I was a rep paladin full time. And I've never really been tempted to go back. To begin with, the main reason I didn't want to go back to healing was because I thought, well, I used to be a very well-regarded healer. And I don't like going through the learning arc again and being basically a crap healer for a while. And then eventually it just became the point where I just thought, I can't be arsed with it. Because it's the same problem, even though I think it's a bit better because you can do the DPS at least. It's the same general issue, you know. Whereas in ESO, the weaving damage into your healing is an inherent part of the whole thing. That's how it's always been and continues to be. So there's a certain appeal with that. Also the fact that it's, you know, you've got the action combat. Action combat with healing is very interesting. I mean, what I sometimes like to do, because one benefit of being a healer and ranged in general, is if you go into Cyrodiil, which is the massive PvP area, then, you know, haven't for ages been able to get into an actual group in it. So, or when I do, it's a really crap group that doesn't know what it's doing, just randoms. So I usually just find a big group of people and stand at the back and just heal them. And then every now and then the enemy rush you, and suddenly everyone run past you, and you wonder what's going on. Then you suddenly see it, you run away. Because unfortunately, I don't have the champion level to be able to withstand an assault by someone that's very high champion level. They will kill me instantly with their far superior gear. And as I say, with champion points, you can defend this because you can take a very high percentage of basically less damage. So I don't think I do very much if I try and go on the offensive. So it's much better to just heal. Stand at the back of a group and heal them. In fact, there was Warhammer Online was really good for PvP. It was the first MMO I ever played where I could, because all I did was PvP in that game. I joined a guild to PvP. Couldn't imagine that, doing that in WoW. And I started off as a warrior priest, but then went to the other side and got a disciple of Cain, which is like an evil paladin. But you didn't wear very strong armour particularly. You had dual-wielded blades and stuff. But there was this one heal you had, which was totally worthless. Utterly. It was like this really, it was the weakest AoE heal in any game ever. It was never going to save anyone's life, ever. You had a bigger AoE heal you could use, but that would use your resources up really quickly. But this AoE heal, also I think the big one was limited. It only healed so many targets. Whereas the weak one would heal however was in range of you. So when you were doing a city attack, or a city attack like when you go to Altdorf and there's some narrow streets, so sometimes it would be absolutely jam-packed with players from both sides, a proper crush. And I would just stand at the back of them doing this really weak AoE heal, which was doing nothing to help anyone. But every time I healed, I got renown, which is like your PvP points. All the time, just getting them all the time. So I went up renown rank so quickly just doing that. Obviously, when I was in the battlegrounds, which I can't remember what they called them, I would be in a guild group, I would heal properly. But yeah, when I was just in the big city things with just like hundreds of other people, I would just stand at the back of them, get myself as close to as big a crush as possible and do the weak heal. WoW is a good PvP game. I cannot disagree more, I'm afraid. If I list the elements I enjoy about PvP, WoW literally has none of them. Now, obviously, it's always subjective what you want from PvP. WoW PvP, in all of its formats, is a brawl. That's all it is. It's just a brawl. There's no battle to it. There is no element of battle in any form of PvP. It doesn't matter how many players they shove against how many other players. It's just a big brawl. I mean, I don't know why they don't just rename Alterac Valley to St. Patrick's Valley and get done with it. Whereas in Warhammer Online, and you can also do this in ESO as well, but Warhammer Online I have more experience of doing it properly with a guild. And so you had fortresses and stuff, and you had to like besiege them. And the way you got to attack the enemy city to unlock that major event, you had to have captured all the forts. And so in terms of capturing forts, you had siege engines to do that. And the defenders, of course, they had their own stuff to deal with it as well. But if you weren't in as part of a big group that could take that on, there were other jobs you could do. You know, if you were in a small group, you could skirmish. You could go around, because obviously the fort being attacked, reinforcements are going to head there. So you could go to various places and try and ambush people. If you were on your own and didn't have a group at all, although it was very easy to get into pugs, but you could report on enemy movements. You know, you could say, oh, there's a group of whatever, estimate the size of it, coming from this direction to this fort. And that would be useful information. You know, there were all sorts of very cunning things you could do. AV has fortress and objectives. No, it doesn't. It has structures, but all you do is you stand at a flag. There was no standing at a flag in Warhammer Online. You had to batter open this fort. You had to batter it open, literally. And you'd have hot oil poured over and all the rest of it, all the full siege malarkey. There was none of that in Alterac Valley at all. You went to a flag and you stood there. And then you went to the next flag and you stood there. And at some point, you go into the more enemy territory and you'll go past the big open area in the middle where you've just got half the raid having a punch-up. All a nonsense. Mechagon could be a good PvP area. It's too small. I mean, the sheer scale of actual people. Now that I've seen the likes of Warhammer Online and ESO for PvP, you could literally have a whole zone just for PvP, nothing else, and put objectives in it and things like that. And it would be tiny compared to the proper PvP games or the proper PvP battle games. But because that's what you want as well. You want interesting terrain. You want terrain that can hide an approach. You want terrain where you can ambush from, so that people passing through a thing are a little bit concerned about what's over the ridge. You know, where you can get to your objective in cover, where you think to yourself, I'm not taking, there is a main road for the foolish or the desperate, but you can get there elsewhere by knowing different little routes through, you know, a bit of exploration, that sort of thing. It adds nuances to PvP, which makes it much more epic, definitely, because you feel part of a battle and not, you know, individual skirmishes. And also there's more roles for you to do depending on whether you are in a proper coordinated group or just a random casual group or even just a small group or just on your own. You know, there was things usefully you could do to get involved in all of those things. And yeah, it was disappointing to me when my computer basically exploded, or the graphics card did, and at the time I could not afford to replace it. So I could replace it with a graphics card, just a cheap off-the-shelf one, which unfortunately it turned out Warhammer Online without a proper gaming computer ran very, very badly. In fact, it was unplayable. So I had to stop. And then when I wanted to get back into it, when I had a better computer, it had stopped because it had been a bit of a disaster, I'm afraid. Which was a shame because the PvP was quite good. I'm not saying it couldn't have been better, but it was quite good. There were just too many other things they cocked up, which was very disappointing. I would like to think that at some point, the problem is when you do a thing and it doesn't work out, you tarnish the reputation for it, don't you? But I would like to think that at some point they would do another Warhammer Fantasy MMO. The only problem is it'd be Age of Sigmar themed now. I want a Wintergrasp. No, Wintergrasp. Look. Okay. Wintergrasp to proper world PvP, what I call proper PvP, is like Garrisons to player housing. Nothing like it. Winter's Grasp is not. It's not even that it's on too small a scale. The whole concept of it was a nonsense. An absolute nonsense. No, not that at all. All that happened with Wintergrasp is it's still standing by a flag and then go to a keep and kick it in and that's it, done. No. The flags thing, when you have proper PvP, you don't really have that much need for flags. ESO sort of has them, but that's for smaller groups. Because, you know, a small group isn't going to be able to kick in an entire fortress. So you have smaller objectives like farms and little things like that that you can assault as well, you know, which is also important. So that's the only reason they have that element in it. But there is no going to a flag and just standing by it. You know, if it's worth you taking it in ESO, there will be people to defend it. And also it's not instanced in the same way. So you can, you know, it's... And that's why the 3 faction thing works out. You can just go in. And there's so much to do. Ridiculous amounts of things to do. It's just that you'll get your head kicked in. But that's fine. I actually don't mind getting my head kicked in. You know. Do I think they'll do more with the AI in Battlegrounds? Oh, inevitably. I absolutely. I mean, they've, you know, I mean, we had the smart NPC thing for the initial outlet for that, of course, was the islands and the warfronts. And then, of course, it was the Arathi Basin thing, wasn't it? Oh, absolutely. I can absolutely see them doing much more with it. Much more with it. But the best use of it would surely be in PvE. Because PvP ultimately is about players versus players. So when you create a PvP setting with these smart NPCs, you're really just reducing the PvP element to it. but I can certainly see these smart NPCs be, it's one of the things that they are surely going to develop. I would expect something quite special for the next expansion with them. I see what they're doing with them this expansion has been testing out and improving. I think they've got something in mind. We'll just have to see what it is. But yeah, it's the one thing that I think they have got something that people could probably anticipate for the future. That is not something they've just put into this expansion at all. And unlike, garrisons, I got the same sort of impression as well. If you think about garrisons, they had those in MoP. It was just the farm, so they did it on a very small scale. And then they did it with garrisons. But then garrisons turned out to be about as welcome as a fart in a spacesuit. So then they had to get rid of them. But this one has been, has not been discouraging. Would they be something for when the game is dying that you could get a group for AI for Dungeons and Raids? Well, I already talked a while ago about the possibility of using them for LFR. So rather than having to wait for loads of, sometimes you have to wait for ages for well, usually you're waiting for a tank, but for whatever, for your group to fill up, because some people have left after a boss or after a wipe, whatever. The idea that if there isn't anyone in the queue, they just give you smart NPCs, and those smart NPCs could do the tanking, healing, and or DPS. That, to me, would be a really good use for them. I could see that being a really good use. Because, let's be honest, in LFR, you treat everyone like NPCs anyway, don't you? They're all just NPCs there to help you get gear. So that, and there could be a benefit to that. Could you imagine, though, if they got the smart NPC so sophisticated that they got loot and you had to ask them if they need it or not before they hearth out or leave the group? That'd be interesting, wouldn't it? If ever it receives a whisper after it's just received... Because you could code that quite easily. If a smart NPC gets a whisper from anyone, doesn't have to even read it, within 1 minute of acquiring a piece of loot, it automatically says in the chat, if you want this piece of loot, links it, roll, and then goes over and trades it with the person that rolled highest. Maybe they could even get them to inspect the person and say, you're not having it, you've already got something better. Oh, that'd be amazing. That would be a superb LFR experience. Not actually knowing. And they could even give inane comments now and then in the chat. Just put a load of random stupid statements culled from years worth of LFRs, so that you then had to have a game. Who was the real person and who was the smart NPC? That could actually encourage more people to go into LFR just to play that game. You use LFR for gear, but only after a month it's been out. I suppose we'll be getting to the point... Well, I suppose we'll be in the situation now where LFR gear would potentially be an upgrade for me. The early... That's the thing. The early LFR gear in BFA wasn't an upgrade for me because I was actually getting gear from Mythic Plus. And now that I am not... What's the item level of Crucible of Storm's LFR gear? Does anyone know? Because I think I'm on about 375, so dumb NPCs mixed with smart ones probably run more LFR for the entertainment. Well, it would be entertaining, wouldn't it? Because every time, because it'd be absolutely hilarious trying to guess who was the real person and who was the NPC. So-and-so would be denouncing real people as NPCs. Oh, they're just an NPC, don't bother with them. They reply, no, I'm not. 370 from... Oh, 375, so... I suppose it might Warforge or something. I guess it'd be just about worth it, maybe. Oh, 380 from the second. Oh, it might be worth doing it then. I say it might be worth doing it. If I can be asked to play the game at some point in the near future, it may be worth doing it. Because I think you only need... That's quite a big gap then, isn't it? Because you only need... I'm pretty sure I saw Blizzard say you only need 350 item level to get into LFR. I mean, a 30 item level upgrade from your bare minimum to get in. Is that... That's not what it used to be, is it? But anyway, I mean, in theory that, yes, in theory that would mean that it would be an upgrade for me. I'm just trying to find, where did I see it? Raid Finder, blah, 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 will open this week, as in now. You will need an average item level of 350 to queue for it. Easy. So that might even mean that I'll have high enough item level to queue for the next LFR. Maybe I should just wait for the next LFR. Which will have more bosses in it. And will have Lady Vash in it. Just do the emissaries and get... Oh, there you go. Yes, I suppose that's also true. That means actually doing something though. It means logging into the game for a start off. I don't even know if the guild I was in is still alive. I don't know whether they moved or something. It's been that long since I've been on. 325 for all day, yeah, per worthless. 345 for BOD. Oh, sorry, in terms of what you need to get in. Right, okay. 350 for, yeah, Crucible Storms. So it may only be something like 370, 375 to get into. I've forgotten the name of it now, but the Lady Vash one. That'll probably have a very nice end boss cinematic, won't it? I'm looking forward to that. I'm not such a big fan of Lady Vash. Oh, okay, saying Lady Vash, I mean Queen Ashara. Why do I keep saying Vash? Ashara. Not such a big fan of her or any sort of Naga, as some people are. But I am looking forward to the actual encounter. When I say looking forward to the encounter, I mean specifically looking forward to where the story goes with it, and whether we kill her or not, or just defeat her, because the raiders. I mean, I still can't believe there has still not been a Jaina kill. Everyone's talking about world first for the next raid. We haven't even finished Battle for Tazara Law yet. All they did was check. They didn't kill either the gnome. I don't mind them not killing Jaina. I'm all right with Jaina. She's a bit moody, but there you go. But they failed to kill the gnome as well. So that's like 2 bosses that no one in the world has even killed. What's the point of that? I thought our heroes were supposed to be getting stronger, not weaker. Or is that Blizzard's way of telling us that we miss our artifacts? Because we would have killed those bosses in the last expansion, but not anymore. Oops, what was that? Looking in my little hidey hole, see if I can see any raid information. Oh no, they're talking about bosses. I don't know what they're talking about. When you heard that Lady Ashvane was in the raid, you knew that Sylvanas was going to be a boss this expansion. Not necessarily. Not necessarily. I think she's going to be a redemption thing. I mean, it's possible for both to happen. They're not mutually exclusive events. But I am not at all convinced that... it's not... They're not going to... They've already said they're not going to do a Garrosh 2.0. And they've already acknowledged that the events so far have been very similar. So I think... Ashar's Eternal Palace, thank you. I think... see, if I remember the name of the raid, I wouldn't have kept saying Vash, would I? No, I think she's going to be like an NPC, a bit like Gromash was in Hellfire Citadel. You know, he's there and involved a few times, and eventually will be on your side. having formerly been your enemy. And there's going to be that thing, but it's not going to be in the next patch. It's going to be in the final raid in 8.3. 8.3.5 will be whatchamacallit. I don't know what it'll be called. Unzoth's hiding place or whatever. The raid of Unzoth's man cave. You think Unzoth will kill her when he's done with her so we don't fight her? No, I think she's going to play a part in helping us defeat Unzoth. I think they're going to do the old thing. They've done this a few times in raids. We're going to battle against Unzoth. And this might just be a mythic only phase. That would really spice it up. We're going to do battle with Unzoth. We're going to ultimately fail. But Sylvanas, realising she's been had, is going to do something. And Unzoth is going to, you know, completely unaware of what's going on. A bit like Snoke in, you know, in the last... The Star Wars film that must not be mentioned, where Kylo Ren did his sneaky thing with his lightsaber and cut him in half. And, you know, it'd be one of those jobs, and Zoth won't be paying attention to Sylvanas because he's focusing on us. He thinks that, you know, he's got her well under control and, you know, she'll stab him in the eye or something. She'll do something that then allows us to finish the job off. That's how I see it going. But we will see. Or maybe Blizzard will just do something incredibly insane and then go, there you go, you couldn't guess what we were going to do, when they just do something that makes no sense, that no one would have ever thought of. It was Rey that cut him in half, was it? I can't remember then. I've only watched it once. It's the only Star Wars film ever that I've only watched once. I thought it was Kylo that did it. Are you sure it was Rey? But anyway, I can stand to be corrected, because I'll say I watched it once and said not watching that again. No, not at the cinema, not even getting it on DVD. If someone posted one through my letterbox perfectly free of charge, I would just put it in the bin. Along with most other things that come through my letterbox. We don't talk about bad Star Wars fanfic here. Yeah, well... We can talk about it, we just have to be careful we don't talk about it for too long, because it gets too depressing. Blizz have never done anything insane just to throw people off. It's always ended well. I don't know about that. I quite like, because where was it? There was something on Wowhead. Wowhead were tweeting about something. Oh, what's this? Baldur's Gate. No. And it was, I think it was from... something. Where is it now? Oh, it's going to do my head in now. Some quote from Anduin in another game. Heroes of the Storm, perhaps. Well, I suppose only Heroes of the Storm is the only one he's in. Where was it? Oh my god. I can't remember whether it was Peculiar who tweeted it or just Wowhead. Right, I'm going to have to look it up now. Oh, here it is. Yes, from Wowhead, where they were saying they've added all the jokes Anduin uses in Heroes of the Storm. And I quite like this one. Anduin saying, there will be peace one day. At least I think there will. How many WoW expansions are left again? Oh. 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 Well then. when he was trying to get her to join the dark side. Okay. Well, I'm not going to watch it again just to see. I'll take your word for it. Because if I had a child and I was having to introduce them to Star Wars, we were discussing last week in what order to show the films, but whatever order I decided to come to do, I would just miss out 8 and go straight to 9. Well, assuming 9 was out at the time. And if they asked me where 8 was, I would say that a monster ate it, and it's no longer available. It was lost like all the Doctor Who episodes, well, not all of them, a lot of 1960s Doctor Who. And if ever they see it in the shops, it's actually a fake and they shouldn't touch it. Otherwise the monster will get them too. No order for anyone includes 8. Not even the first order. I only seen it once, but a hell of a good memory when it comes to movies or shows. Okay. But, oh no. It's so bad. I couldn't believe how awful it was. Almost put me off even going to watch the third in this trilogy. I think I will. The problem was, even if it turns out to be better, it'll make me think of number 8. Just going to see it will make me be thinking of 8. What the hell am I looking at here? Oh. If Blizz writers are taking notes from that, Steaming Power in for serious trouble. Oh, do you know what? Because it does sometimes worry me, you know. People who write storylines for games and things like that, you know, you might imagine are, in a way, frustrated writers. Because there are, aren't there? There are people, in any profession, there are people who desperately want to get into a profession. And something, anything artistic, you can do on an amateur level. You can do yourself. You can write your own little stories and things like that. And if you're really not good at it and you fail as an actual author, you know, you are obviously going to try and get jobs writing. And, you know, you do sometimes worry that occasionally people end up with these jobs just because they pushed and pushed. And they ended up getting one because they weren't quite as shit as the other candidates. Because I do worry about what's going on with it. I mean, part of it is just the fact I think there are too many people involved in the writing process. I think that's the main problem. But you've also potentially got some people who are just not good at it. They actually made an Admiral Gender Studies action figure. But it's sold... Oh, dear. Well, I mean, they do. It's all about merchandising, isn't it? That's how Lucas made most of his money from the original Star Wars. It wasn't from people going to see it at the cinema, although plenty did, of course. Sort of selling all the stuff after it. That's how Sir Alec Guinness, you know, made an absolute mint. Because rather than accepting a salary, a fee for it, he wanted a cut of the merchandising, as in the profits, basically. And he made an absolute packet. Absolute bomb. He said that was his pension. Although I imagine he was on a fair amount of money anyway already, because he'd been working like since very young. You hope 9 gets good reviews because you're not seeing it the first weekend. It depends when it comes out for me whether I will see it the first weekend or not. I might do. I might go and watch it. I mean, I have to admit, I do generally prefer going to see something when it's very quiet. But you're only, you know, if you want to see something really quiet, you basically have to then wait weeks and weeks. And I won't necessarily want to do that. Games journalists, most can't even game and just write political pieces in game reviews. Well, there is a certain amount of that for some of them. Yeah. I mean, I don't think a games journalist necessarily has to be really good at games. But, you some seem to be so bad that they don't even. I mean, if you're not actually good enough to be able to play enough of the content in the time you've got to review it, then your review is fairly worthless as well. But yeah, I mean, you could argue, again, if people really want to get into journalism, then there are avenues in it that are easier to get into than others. You know, you might not make it as a columnist in a national newspaper, but maybe, you know, a gaming blog or a blog of anything that has your interest. You have to wait a month to see it, or you have to travel 2 hours. See, there are films I have travelled 2 hours for. There was a really good cinema in Sheffield that I used to like going to, just out, not in the city centre, on the outskirts. And I used to travel there from Grimsby. That was back in when Lord of the Rings films were coming out. Over there were a few films. It wasn't just the Lord of the Rings. There were a few other films as well. And I certainly, and that was that used to take a good hour and between an hour and an hour and a half, I would say, to get there. I used to do that. It was very good cinema. The cinema that there was where I was living at the time was one of those pokey little ones. It was really what used to be in yesteryear just a stage. And then they convert it to a cinema, but it's not very good. So I used to go to the bigger one. Whereas here, there is a reasonable one where I am now, so I don't have to go travelling off to Sheffield. But unfortunately, the last film I went to see actually was, you know, that Star Wars film. I don't think I've watched anything since. I don't know whether it may be. I don't go and watch that many films at the cinema anyway. I usually am quite content to wait for them to come out on DVD or Blu-ray, I suppose, these days. Raise the interest point about too many hands in the writing. Do you think that's an issue for WoW? I think it's a massive issue for WoW. Huge. And it's very clear, you know, apart from the fact that how could it not be if you've got too many people involved in a process, but you've literally got the situation where a sequence of an important event, an absolutely crucial event to the story, in game happens one way, and yet in the written stuff you got with the physical copy of the collector's edition for BFA is completely different. So basically, that's someone, after they've already committed themselves in one medium, changing it for the other. I don't know which came first. It doesn't really matter. So, yes, it's absolutely the case. I don't agree ever with having more than 2 writers on anything. I don't care how big the project is. 2 writers is the absolute maximum. And if you've got one good writer, that's enough for me. But yeah, I think if I now had to face a 2-hour drive to go and watch it, I possibly wouldn't. Not because I would necessarily... I mean, I don't like driving anywhere. But if I have to, I do. I mean, not that I would necessarily be too bothered about the 2-hour drive there. It'd be the 2-hour drive back after crushing disappointment. Realising that I'll have been away from my computer for possibly 7 or 8 hours and regret it bitterly, and still have a further 2 excuse me, and still have 2 of those 7 or 8 hours to complete. And when I get back, it'll probably be too late to do anything anyway. So yeah, but as it is, it's not very far away from me at all now. But whether I do go and see it straight away or not, I'm not sure. I mean, you know, if I was in America, I definitely wouldn't go and see it early, because Americans have this annoying habit of applauding even when there's nobody there to take your applause. Never understood that in cinemas. Unfortunately, you don't tend to get that in Britain. At least I've never encountered it. But you can still get idiots. So the fewer people that are in the cinema, the fewer idiots there are. That's the way I look at it. Phantom Menace completely cured you of Star Wars. Phantom Menace... Phantom Menace was actually cruel more than bad. It was cruel because the opening sequence was superb. Remember where it's come from, especially if you're into Star Wars, like the wider universe like I was. So you've watched, obviously, the original trilogy and been hooked on that. But of course, the original trilogy takes place against a background of the Jedi having all been wiped out. So now you know that the prequels are at a time when the Jedi are numerous and powerful. So you are going to go to somewhere where Jedi are not mocked in the way that they were in the original trilogy. So I was really looking forward to that. And it starts out so well. You've got a massive blockade around a planet. You've got 2 Jedi get out, and they're going to sort it all out. And, you know, attempts on their life, which of course fail. And then on the bridge, when they're breaking into the bridge with a lightsaber, blast doors with a lightsaber, you've got some guy inside saying to the boss, have you ever encountered Jedi before? And the other one going, no, not really. And then you've got the other guy going, we're going to die. We're all going to die. And it really gives you that juxtaposition between huge battle fleet, effectively, with all of its robots and stuff on board, against 2 Jedi with glowing sticks. And it really did set the scene for this age of the powerful Jedi. And then Jar Jar Binks happened. I mean, I say Jar Jar Binks happened. I mean, the fact that they left the ship was the first stupid thing. I mean, they'd specifically gone to go and deal... They were so close to dealing with those people. The idea... It wasn't a standoff. You know, the idea that they couldn't have... I don't know, it's just... So everywhere from Qui-Gon taking his lightsaber out of the blast door was disappointing. And had it been disappointing all the way through... In some ways, it wouldn't have seemed as bad. George Lucas still says Jar Jar Binks is his favourite character. Well, the problem is, once you've had to tell a lie about something, you have to stick to it, I suppose, don't you? It's never his favourite character. No one could like that character. Here in the US, we also yell at the movie screen as well. Do you? Gordon Bennett. Now, we only yell at pantomimes, but there's actual actors there who respond to it and expect it. Have I seen the trailer for Brightburn? No, because I don't even know what that is. Not been tempted to see a movie in theatres for a while, but you like the evil twist on Kid Superman. Okay, I've not heard of it at all. The only, you know, even remotely related DC thing I've heard of, obviously, is the Joaquin Phoenix Joker film, which, you know, I don't know whether it looks interesting or not. I know there's a lot of people going, oh, it looks really good. I'm not sure. It may do. So I'll probably go and see that. Depends when it, again, with all these things, it just depends when it comes out, doesn't it? But anyway, I mean, George Lucas was never the greatest writer anyway. He was a very good director. He had, I mean, he had a reasonable concept for Star Wars, but it was effectively just, you know, King Arthur in space. It's just better writers have taken it into some quite interesting places. So in some ways, the idea of him selling it wasn't necessarily a huge disappointment, other than the fact that who they sold it to. And now we've seen what the result of that is. I mean, the other thing that got me about George Lucas is the way he kept saying how with the prequels, oh, he'd wanted to do this for so many years, but the technology just wasn't there. I was thinking, there is zero way that when he was going through his story arc for what is now episodes 4, 5 and 6, that he ever imagined any of the storylines in 1, 2 and 3. So that is also another... He's just basically a liar, isn't he? It's a bit of a fibber, is old George Lucas. But never mind. We got a good story out of it, even though it took other people to tell it well. Because that's always the best part of Star Wars, for me, is all the really old stuff. Because they have this weird, like, regression in the Star Wars universe. The further back in time you get, the better the technology is. To a certain point, the very first lightsabers weren't the greatest. But generally speaking, you know, so when you have the prequels, they've got way better technology than in the sequels. And if you go back thousands of years, you know, to the old Republic type stuff, massively improved technology. And also much, much more powerful Jedi and Sith. Like, way more powerful. I mean, that's why, again, you know, there was a bit of the last Star Wars film that perked me up. And it's when Luke Skywalker appeared to deflect that bombardment from the First Order. And because I've read a lot of books from, you know, that are set way in the past when you had Sith who were that powerful, who could easily have withstood all that without having to dodge out the way or anything. They'd just stand there and go, yeah, and touching me. And I thought, oh, this is really good. Luke Skywalker's showing his real power here. And I suppose technically he was, because he projected himself and made himself seem real, but to several people that were force sensitive. So that is a power in itself. But the fact that it wasn't physically him was a disappointment. It's because the Emperor suppressed a lot of the galaxy. Oh yeah, you can argue for all sorts of reasons why it is. It's just that it is. The further back you go, the better the technology seemed to get. You liked Kreia, did you? I mean, my favourite books still remain the Darth Bane trilogy. Even though, or possibly because, they don't actually officially tell you how it ends. It leaves it open at the end. You don't actually know whether he died or not. When the trailer first started, you were like, not another Superman origin story. Then he saw him crush a girl's hand that was picking on him. The thing is, though, the problem is, you know, when, yes, certain origin stories have been done to death in the comics and the films, and obviously there's a temptation there for a writer to go, right, I'm going a different direction with this. But it can still end up being absolutely crap. The bottom line is, it doesn't matter whether you do anything massively off track with a well-established story or not. If it's got a good writer, they will produce something that's entertaining. And if it's a bad writer, it doesn't matter how good their initial idea is, it will not be very entertaining. Darth Bane and Plagueis, yeah, is much more recent, of course. Very recent. Palpatine did for him. But, yeah. But that's the thing. I mean, in theory, you know, see, part of me wants them to dramatise some of those really good stories in the books. Part of me wants to see the Darth Bane trilogy realised in cinema. And then the other part of me thinks to myself, What would Disney do with this? Maybe they should never do that. Ever. I mean, technically, that Darth Bane thing, I don't even know. Like, technically, it's not definitely canon. And yet, what is canon tends to agree. I don't think anything has ever contradicted it that I know of. I'm not saying I have read all the Star Wars stuff out there. Far from it. But from what I can gather, I don't think. Because Darth Bane was even featured in one of the like Rebel Wars, Clone Wars things, sorry. So yeah, I don't think anyone's, although it's not officially canon, it's a bit like one of those things. No one's official, nothing that is canon has ever sort of gainsaid what happened in the book. I mean, even the rule of two is now established in the films as well. And that was, of course, Darth Bane's little rule. Although I don't know where I don't necessarily know that it was invented for the Darth Bane stories. It may have been invented elsewhere and produced for those. I don't know. Why don't they? Couldn't Disney see they're making billions from doing the movies, seeing it as a big fan base? Yes, I can see that they would want to do it. What I can't see is that they would do a good job of it. It's like they're doing all the stuff that's connected to the current timeline. You know, the all the stuff around the Skywalker type saga, you could call it. But if they were to do things like you say, Revan or Bane or, you know, Tulakord or any number of the other type powerful Sith, it would be really awesome to see film dramatizations of those stories. But I would have no faith that Disney would not ruin it completely. Oh, Rule of Two came from Revan. No, hang on. Are you sure? In terms of books, I'm talking. I'd have to look it up. I think I have Revan books as well, or some. But anyway, we've completely strayed from Warcraft again, haven't we? Yes, I know in terms of the story, but in terms of where it came in the books, it was in the Bane trilogy books, and it hadn't been instigated for some time. He reintroduced it, and it's that Rule of Two that has persisted, supposedly, all the way up to Palpatine. Or Palpatine, whatever you want to say. When do ever movie studios do a book right? Well, in some ways, they don't have to faithfully reproduce a book. There is nothing wrong with, you know, because to a certain extent, the pacing in a book is very different to the way pacing needs to work in a film. In a book, you need, at the end of a chapter, to pique someone's interest to get them to turn the page again. In a film, the pacing is a little different. So I can understand some changes, but, you know, there's a difference between changing it for cinema and ruining it. But anyway, there we go. But, you know, we've come to the end again today. I will be back on again next week. I will hopefully be doing a little bit more streaming as well, but at the weekend. I don't think I'm going to get time this week as well, but I'll be pottering about on ESO again a bit. So thanks for coming on, everyone. And until next time, I will see you later.